Is King Charles a Muslim? Already you're thinking that is a wild and preposterous claim, an absolute crackpot conspiracy theory. Although conspiracy theories these days just end up being true a couple of years later. But that's not the point, okay? I am not trying to be the second coming of Alex Jones.
I'm the amazing Randy!
I just find this question really interesting because actually there's quite a lot of stories and evidence that suggest it could be true. Now I'm just going to warn you in advance, I don't have definitive proof of this, okay? You're going to have to listen to the stories and the evidence going all the way back to the early 1990s, and you're going to have to make up your own mind. I'm really curious to know what you guys think, so please do leave it in the comments. Maybe you think I'm completely insane, that's okay. Let's get into it. So why are we even talking about this? Well, it relates to a controversy surrounding some of the prince's recent actions. To start with, he was seen packing dates for Ramadan.
You are packing dates faster than I can see them.
And by itself, that means absolutely nothing, right? Because King Charles is a public figure and he's just doing public figure stuff, I guess. But next we have the celebration of Iftar at Windsor Castle. And for those who don't know, Iftar is the breaking of the fast at the end of a day of Ramadan. So Muslims during Ramadan, they don't eat during the day and then they feast in the mornings and they feast in the evenings. And that was celebrated at Windsor Castle for the first time ever. Windsor Castle being the home of King Charles, of course. Now, as I say, this is pretty unusual. Windsor Castle, home of the king, first time this has ever happened. But by itself, again, this isn't really that strong evidence, if we're honest. The king, after all, he's a Christian, right? And so what words do you think the king had for Christians on Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday, or Lent in general? Nothing.
And the royal family also took to their Twitter feed, and they have millions of followers to mark the occasion, sending their best wishes to Muslims in the UK, Commonwealth and all around the world.
Which is all very nice and quite right, of course, because there are many, many Muslims who are in the Commonwealth which the royal family heads. However, what's been said for the Christians?
Zippo.
Because there's been a deafening silence from, well, the royal family, politicians, and many others as Christians mark the beginning of Lent, despite the fact the king is, of course, head of the Church of England.
Yes, it's all rather disappointing. Shall we get the reaction of the former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, Dr. Gavin Ashenden?
It's very odd indeed the king, who's head of the Church of England, should simply be silent. It's an act of discourtesy at one level, but at another level it's hard to understand it as being just discourtesy.
As you heard the former bishop there say, it's quite hard to understand this as just a discourtesy. And I agree. So what other explanation is there, possibly, for the head of the Church of England forgetting Shrove Tuesday, Ash Wednesday and Lent more broadly? And speaking of the Church of England, what did they do for Shrove Tuesday? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now that's not to say that they didn't post on Shrove Tuesday. They did. They posted about getting churches towards net zero and how churches can reduce their carbon emissions. Is that the most important thing for the church on Shrove Tuesday under Charles's leadership? Okay, that's a bit strange. Now, there was a lot of backlash for this, as you might expect, and eventually they started posting a whole bunch of things for Ash Wednesday. But do they not even have a calendar? Are they not Christians? How are they not celebrating Shrove Tuesday and yet still putting out posts? I don't understand it. Someone's going to have to explain this to me. Now, all of that is just the tip of the iceberg, and yet it's what everyone is talking about right now. But let's be honest, we're rational beings, and that is purely circumstantial. It doesn't really show that much by itself. It doesn't really even indicate that strongly that Charles is a Muslim. For that, we need to look a little bit deeper into Charles's past. You see, back in 1993, the Grand Mufti of Cyprus claimed to know for a fact that Prince Charles has converted to Islam. He said that it happened in Turkey, and he said that if you really want to know the truth, look at how often the king travels to Turkey, and you will see that your future king is a Muslim. Buckingham Palace, of course, were very quick to deny this, as you might expect. But such a strange thing to say. Why would he say it, right? Now you could say, of course, that the Grand Mufti was probably just creating a bit of mischief. Fine. And yet 3 years prior to this claim from the Grand Mufti, Charles delivered a speech at the Sheldonian Theatre in Oxford. And I'm going to read you 2 snippets from it because I think you'll find it rather enlightening. Our judgment of Islam has been grossly distorted by taking the extremes to be the norm. For example, people in this country, England, frequently argue that the Sharia law of the Islamic world is cruel, barbaric and unjust. Our newspapers, above all, love to peddle those unthinking prejudices. The truth is, of course, different and always more complex. My own understanding is that extremes like cutting off the hands are actually rarely practiced. The guiding principle and spirit of Islamic law, taken straight from the Quran, should be those of equity and compassion. Okay, and then later in the speech, Islam can teach us a way of understanding and living in the world which Christianity is poorer for having lost. At the heart of Islam is its preservation of an integral view of the universe. Why is Charles making speeches like this in the early 1990s? Islam was barely a speck in the demographics of the UK back then. So I don't think you can really argue that it's all about him being a public figure and things like that. Unless, of course, he knew that this was going to expand in the UK to become 10, 20, 30%. That would be interesting. Now, Charles has actually made a whole bunch of speeches like this over his lifetime. And look, you're welcome to dismiss these as, you know, he's just a public figure. He's trying to unite people. He's trying to understand something about the world. Fine, you go ahead and do that. But don't forget that this guy is meant to be the head of the Church of England, a Christian church. Anyway, we have another speech from 2006, and this time I have some video footage. And again, it's Charles laying huge praise on Islam.
The rights of Muslim women to property and inheritance, and to the conducting of business, were rights prescribed by the Quran 1400 years ago. Some of these rights were novel even to my grandmother's generation. Many of the traits on which modern Europe prides itself came to it from Muslim Spain. Diplomacy, free trade, open borders, the techniques of academic research, of anthropology, etiquette, fashion, various types of medicine, hospitals. Islam is part of our past and our present in all fields of human endeavor. It has helped to create modern Europe. It is part of our own
Yes, of course, because basically everything good in Europe, that came from Islam. Women's rights, they've always been at the forefront of the Quran. Okay, Charles. And why does Charles think he's such an expert on Islam anyway? Well, you're probably going to want to take a seat for this. This is going to shock you a little bit. It's because Charles learnt Arabic so that he could study the Quran. Now, think about this. He could have learned Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. He could have learned Hebrew or ancient Greek or ancient Latin so that he could better understand biblical texts as the head of the Church of England, but he didn't. He learned Arabic. Now, this is as per an article from the Daily Mail in 2013, and before people say, oh, Daily Mail, yes, Daily Mail, but it directly quotes him. It is true. And it is mind-blowing if you ask me. I find this story, I can't believe I didn't hear about it at the time, but I find this really shocking. Anyway, how good exactly do you think Charles's Arabic is? Well, let's take a listen.
Assalamu alaikum. Hayakum maratan ukhra fi al-Mamlaka al-Muttahida baladkum al-Thani.
Yes, his Arabic clearly sucks, but what did you really expect? He's a guy who took 2 A-levels and only managed to get a B and a C. And I don't want to sound like an academic snob here. I understand that my academic achievements are not the norm. They are in fact very good. But this is King Charles, at the time Prince Charles, a guy who could have had unlimited tutors, the best possible education, everything. And he only managed to get 2 A-levels, which tells me something. He either really hates education, he's very lazy, or he's really rather thick. Now, if he really hates education, why is he spending so long trying to learn Arabic? That must be torture for him, unless he's really deeply committed to the cause. Anyway, that meeting, by the way, that was a meeting with a whole bunch of Qataris, and the Qataris are the same people who walked into his office and dumped 3 million euros in cash on his desk. I'm deadly serious. You can go and look that up for yourself. What do you make of all of this then? Do you find the arguments convincing that Charles could in fact be a Muslim? As for me, I don't really know for sure. But what I do know is this: he is not a Christian. Look, let me give you this thought experiment. You're the King of England, you're the head of the Church of England, and you're a deeply devout Christian. You truly believe that the only path to salvation is through Jesus Christ. And yet you sit over a kingdom and watch Christianity repeatedly decline. You host Ramadan festivals in Windsor Castle. None of this makes sense, right? That is not how you would behave in the circumstances that I just described. You would be doing everything you possibly could to restore Christianity to your nation and save as many souls as you could. I mean, surely that just makes sense. And so for me, the argument that he's a Christian, I don't believe it. I don't think he's a Christian at all. Not one bit. And let me go even further. Would you just sit there and stay silent over the persecution of Christians in Nigeria? No, you wouldn't. Would you sit there and stay silent about issues like room in gangs in the UK by certain ethnic groups? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't stay silent on these issues if you were truly a devout Christian. Of course you wouldn't. So I don't believe it at all. Maybe you do. I don't understand where you get your evidence for that. Sure, he probably goes to church sometimes to keep up pretenses, but not a chance. 0% Christian, this guy. Not at all. Now, all of this leads me to just one final point. I read an article yesterday which was titled, "Could Charles be our last monarch?" And I think the answer here is a resounding yes. Look, traditionally, the people who supported the monarchy are sort of right-wing guys, okay? I was in the army for 7 years. I'm a nationalist. I'm proud of this country, okay? I'm patriotic. And I do, in general, support the idea of a monarchy as it currently exists. But I cannot support King Charles. Not one bit. The guy who famously was recorded saying that he wanted to be Camilla's tampon. Anyway, look, that's not really relevant. And then on the left, you've got people who hate the idea of a monarchy altogether. They really don't like the idea that a guy inherits billions of pounds, doesn't pay inheritance tax, and then technically rules over them. Yeah, they don't like the idea. So who is going to be left supporting the monarchy soon? And I'm not really that convinced that William will be the saviour or that he'll even manage to do it in time. Look, William delivers speeches at the World Economic Forum. Oh, by the way, when I was doing research for this, I found out something that terrified me. There's something called the World Islamic Economic Forum. So think about the WEF and think about how terrifying that is and how much we don't really like them, and then just add Islamic into it. Crazy. And of course Charles delivered a speech there. I should have mentioned it really. Anyway, that's by the by. I don't think there's going to be that many people left who support the monarchy, right? I really, really don't. And so yes, this could be the last monarch. And all I would say to Charles, if you're listening, chubby fingers, if that crown is wearing a little too heavy on your head, I'd be happy to relieve you of your command. I will command the English people because it'd be a brilliant privilege to do so. Something that you don't seem to quite realise. I'm rambling a little bit. I'm sorry that I had to inform you that there's a World Islamic Economic Forum because it's like the only thing worse than the World Economic Forum, right? I feel like I've burdened you somewhat there. Maybe I'll edit it out. Anyway, till the next time, like, comment and subscribe. I'll try and reply to a bunch of comments and yeah, peace out. Hey puppy, are you a bit tired? You look tired. It's a bit warm, isn't it? Annie, sit. Sit. You're going to do a salute for me. Salute. Come on, salute. You're just knackered, aren't you? You can't be bothered. Okay.